investigation and treatment of couples with recurrent first trimester and the second trimester miscarriage, the Green Top guideline published in 2011, guideline number 70. And then you have to update your knowledge with the TOG, TOG article, okay, which was given like it has mentioned some important points. Very important for you to know that when do we say miscarriage, don't say like abortion. That term is obsolete, right? So miscarriage
Yeah.
is defined as the spontaneous loss of pregnancy before the fetus reaches viability. So what is the age
Viability.
of viability? Like from the time of conception, from the type of conception up to the 24 weeks. Anything, any mishap occurring before that is going to be called a miscarriage, right? And
Yeah.
after that, after 24 weeks, we will call it a birth, right? The surviving birth before 24 weeks of gestation, they won't survive it. So by recurrent, I mean, as the guideline says, that 3 or more consecutive pregnancies, and it affects like 1% of the couples who are trying to conceive, not 1% of all couples. Pay attention to the words. The people who are trying to conceive, 1% of them, not 1% of the general population. Then
Okay.
1 to 2% of, so most of the miscarriages, they will occur in the first trimester like that, okay? Then 1 to 2% they will take place in the second trimester of pregnancy like that. If I ask you what is the most common cause of miscarriages, what will you like to tell me?
So the most common cause would be the genetic abnormalities like
Genetic
chromosomal.
abnormalities.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, if you will recall your knowledge from the first part, the most common trisomy is trisomy 16, but we don't mention that. Why? Because we don't, those children, they cannot survive, they die prematurely. They die even before diagnosis of pregnancy, okay, or immediately after diagnosis like that. Why? Because that condition is incompatible with life. That's why, we have this syndrome has not been described. Then the second most will be Down syndrome with an incidence of 1 in 700. Then this one Edwards syndrome, trisomy 18, the incidence
Yeah.
1 in 3000. Then Patau syndrome. Okay,
Do we need to
trisomy.
know these numbers? Like
Yeah, you need to know that
that's
because they are very important for the SBAs. Okay, so for the
okay.
Patau syndrome, it is going to be like 1 in 5000. So most commonly they are going to ask with this from this guideline. Then they are very fond of asking about the high risk pregnancies. Okay, so let's pay attention to this one here. That if they will give you like this should be on your fingertips. Like if the chance of miscarriages are usually higher at the extremes of ages. Okay, so 12 to 19 years like the teenager, so 13%. Okay, second group 20 to 24 years, the risk of having recurrent miscarriage is going to be 11%. Okay, age related risk, okay, not recurrent, these are age related risk. Pay attention to each and every word. The
Okay.
recurrent miscarriage risk is going to be just 1%, right? And it is 1 to 2% in the second trimester. And if the woman is 12 to 19, then because of her 18 age, she's a teenager, right? The risk is 13%. 20 to 24 years, 11%. 25 to 29 years, it is 12%. 30 to 34 years, it is 5%. 35 to 39 years, it is 1 in 4 or 25%. 40 to 44 years, 51%. And more than 45, it is going to be 93%. These two numbers are very important for you because most of my students, they like confuse between these two numbers, okay? So don't be confused. Less than 45, 51, and more than 45, 93%.
93%.
So advanced maternal age, that is an independent risk factor, and then advanced paternal age is also an independent risk factor. The age of the father is more than 45, that is also more than 40 years, that is also a risk factor. And the woman, the risk of miscarriage is highest among couples where the woman is 35 years of age and the man more than 40 years of age. So if you will combine their ages, like woman is 35, husband is 40, then again their risk will increase like that, okay? So then the risk of further miscarriage is going to increase with each pregnancy, okay? So if she is having like recurrent miscarriages, then her after like suffering this pregnancy successive after each loss, the risk is going to increase up to 40% if she has like 3 consecutive pregnancy losses. Whatever is the
Yeah.
risk of any woman, she has lost 3 babies, she is going, there's a 40% chance that she is going to lose the second one also. Then there are certain risk factors, okay? Why? The most important reason is environmental risk factors, and the second most important thing is environmental risk factors. Sometimes right now we can identify some genes, but there are certain genes which are potentiated by the environmental factors. So when the environment is suitable, then those genes are expressed. Okay. So maternal smoking, it depends that how many toxins are there. Cigarette is going to increase risk of miscarriage, and also going to increase risk of IUGR. Why? Because it is understandable. It produces so many toxins, hydrocarbons, which are, um, you know, uh, like vasoconstrictive. So defective vasculogenesis, so automatically those pregnancies are going to have some problems like that, okay? So they are going to increase the risk of spontaneous miscarriage, and then in their dependent, dose dependent, okay, like more than taking 2 cups of coffee or like smoking more than 11 cigarettes. That is the point, okay? Then heavy alcohol. Heavy alcohol, why? Because it is toxic to the baby and also in the environment of the baby, like that, okay? So women
Yeah.
who are taking 5 or more units per week, the risk of sporadic miscarriage, like it can occur independent of the previous history, it can occur. So more than 5 or more units, the risk is going to increase. Among the known causes which the medical science has diagnosed, the most important cause is antiphospholipid syndrome.
Yeah.
Antiphospholipid syndrome, it can occur independently or it can occur as a part of some disorders. Here, the guideline says that this is the most important treatable cause of the miscarriage. So, if they ask you what is the most important treatable cause, that is not PGD, okay, that is
The
treating
antiphospholipid.
antiphospholipid syndrome. Okay, so it is telling you that basically your patient is going to have antiphospholipid antibodies like lupus anticoagulant and anticardiolipin antibody and
Yes.
beta 2 microglobulin antibody. Okay, so sometimes they like to ask you that which antibodies are important. So you should know that there are 3 antibodies. They can give you a set of antibodies and you will have to find which one is going to cause this problem for your patient, like that. So lupus anticoagulant, anticardiolipin antibodies, and anti-beta 2 glycoprotein 1 antibody. They can give you any one of these three. Okay, so pay attention to this one because most of the candidates, they will remember the others, but they will forget this one. So by definition, there can be adverse anti combination because of the vascular thrombosis, because in the antiphospholipid syndrome the blood is hypercoagulable due to certain things, due to these antibodies, and the complexes are formed in the placental circulation. There would be defective placentation. So these pregnancies are inherently at an increased risk of problem. Sometimes in the exam they will give you a combination of the factors, okay, and then you will have
Yeah.
to identify that which one is causing this problem, like that, okay. So these three, or so you will have to choose the combination which defines antiphospholipid syndrome. 3 or more consecutive miscarriages before 10 weeks of gestation, 1 or more morphologically normal fetal losses after the 10th week of gestation, then 1 or more preterm births before the 34 weeks of the pregnancy owing to placental disease, because in the placenta we have got the clots or the angiogenesis was defective. That's why these babies are not going to survive. It is not
So,
necessary that the one patient should show all of these features. They can give, she can exhibit just one feature, right? Doesn't have to
so
show.
is
It
it,
is not. Yeah.
sorry, these three categories, are they like one of them is necessary to perform the antiphospholipid test?
Yes, yes. Patient
Okay.
satisfies any of these conditions. That's what I'm telling you. Syndrome means a set of conditions. But here, it is not necessary that patient should fulfill all of these conditions. Even one factor is coming up, showing up, no problem. You have to manage that patient, okay? We don't have to wait that all three should be there. Anyone is happening recurrently, it is compromising her fertility, potential, everything, so we need to do something for her. That is the point, okay?
Okay.
That is a fact, okay? Then anti-phospholipid syndromes, they are present, antibodies are present in 15% of the women with recurrent miscarriage. So very easy. They are another pet question that how many how many miscarriages are due to anti-phospholipid syndrome. So clear answer, 15%, like that, okay? Then women are having recurrent miscarriages. So with no pharmacological intervention, what will be the live birth rate? It can be as low as 10%.
10%.
So my dear, read the guideline very well. Why? Because if you
I
don't
think this is
wait,
a question. Yeah.
all of these are questions. That's why I'm highlighting this guideline and this will be available for you like that. Okay. Then the genetic factors. Now we are going to the other factors. Like when we are describing this fact, we have to talk about like many factors. Why many factors? Because if we will look at these, the causes. So you should remember that in the recurrent early pregnancy loss, we know that it is affecting 1% of the couples who are trying, cause found in
Fine.
half of the cases, 50%, not in more than 50%. Okay. Then what are the major causes? Idiopathic, most of all, most common, idiopathic. Among the known causes, chromosomal. Then molecular genetic abnormalities, aneuploidies, PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. Then endocrinopathies like hypothyroidism, hyperprolactinemia can be a combination of disorders, diabetes. Then structural abnormalities like there can be uterine abnormalities. So most commonly they will cause like the second trimester miscarriages. Infections, yes, infections have a role. We'll go into their detail, but in the infections, just remember that bacterial vaginosis has been associated with recurrent miscarriages. That is the point. Then environmental factors, like I told you, smoking, then alcohol, they are toxic to the baby. Okay. Then thrombophilias.
Yeah.
Thrombophilias, they can affect in two ways. When they are part of the antiphospholipid syndrome and when they are occurring independently. So then that some will be the pre-existing, like inherited thrombophilias, or the acquired. We'll talk about them in a bit, like that. Autoimmune disorders like SLE, all autoimmune disorders, the antiphospholipid syndrome can appear in them. Don't think that they will not appear in certain disorders. Then there can be unexplained. So idiopathic, just like the IUFT, here also in the 50% cases you are never going to know about the cause. That is the point. Okay, so that's why it is also very important. So the questions they have given you, but you need to remember the exact words. Why? Because they are going to ask you these questions. Okay, so you have to pay attention. So genetic factors. So among the genetic factors, what factors are important? Okay. Genetic factors. Several things can happen. Okay. So in 2 to 5% of the couples recurrent miscarriage, one of the partners carries a balanced structural abnormality. That is one point. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not unbalanced. This is balanced. Look here. I have highlighted this is very important. Balanced structural chromosomal anomaly. And then the most commonly it is going to be balanced reciprocal or Robertsonian translocations. This is not unbalanced. This is balanced translocation. Balanced translocation means that some genetic defect has occurred in one place and it has been balanced, like the amount of the genetic material is going to be the same. Pay attention to the same. The sequence will be different, but the total amount of DNA will be contained in the normal amount. That is the point, okay? So,
I think one of the books there is a question about this.
in
This
every book
balance.
you are going to find the question. I'm telling you again that the books only to monitor for the timed practice. But if you really want to score very high in the EMQs and in the SPS, you need to read the guideline and the material I am sharing with you. You have to read that very carefully because your all important points have been mentioned. Okay, like that. So
Will you mind sending me this guideline which you highlighted
yeah,
now?
I will. Don't worry at
Yeah,
all.
thank you.
In the web on the website you are going to find the notes, like they have already been like summarized and reworded, but I will send you this one also because this is like more reassuring like that. Okay.
Yeah,
So 2 to
okay, thank
5% couples with the recurrent miscarriages, one of the partners carries a balanced structural chromosomal anomaly. It has nothing to do with your sex chromosomes, okay? Only structural chromosomal abnormalities, most commonly balanced reciprocal or Robertsonian translocation. You will have to identify the correct statement. Don't have to go into their further details like that, okay? Then embryonic chromosomal abnormalities, like the embryo was having like trisomies, and how many of what is the incidence? The incidence is very high, like 30 to 57% of the miscarriages, further miscarriages. Okay, miscarriages, they are going to happen because of the chromosomal abnormalities. That is one thing. Then, you know, um, as the number of the miscarriages will increase, that is also a qualifying statement. Then the chances of having miscarriage, they are going to be, the risk of euploid pregnancy loss increases. So as the number of miscarriages is increasing, if euploid when the number was normal, even then the pregnancy loss rate is going to increase. Chromosomal abnormalities, and after that, even by chance she has conceived a normal happy pregnancy, like that with normal chromosomal makeup, still her chances of increasing and losing that baby, they are going to increase tremendously. That is one point.
Yeah.
Anatomic factors. There can be congenital uterine abnormalities. Again, they are going to ask you the number here, so just remember that the number of the reported prevalence of the abnormalities is 1.8% to 37.6%. Okay, don't have to go into the details. So then you should know that what kind of abnormalities are going to cause it like that. Okay. So you should remember that if the woman is untreated and she has abnormal like this uterine abnormalities, then her chance of having a preterm birth, she's going to have a preterm delivery, like in the bicornuate uterus, unicornuate uterus. You must have
Yeah.
seen that
Yeah.
these patients, they will go into labor at 32, 33 weeks because the uterus cannot hold them. So regarding the type of abnormalities, there can be like cervical weakness. Don't never use the word cervical incompetence. That is not a reassuring word. Okay. So it means like there are certain factors into the cervix which we cannot identify right now. So how many miscarriages are caused by due to cervical weakness? We have no quantification, but we say that in a certain population we are going to have cervical weakness. That is one point. The second thing is that we will talk about that in a bit, but you should remember like there can be uterine septum. So uterine septum, that will cause miscarriages in the second trimester. Why? Because the septum is there, it is thick, so it cannot contain the baby, so miscarriage will occur. But it is not mentioned, it is not recommended to do histoscopic resection. Why? Because this is done only in the randomized trials, okay, and in the very specialized centers, and the point is that even after that we cannot guarantee that she's going to get an healthy baby like that, okay, a live birth like that. So that's why no intervention. And then the other problems of with resection can be like there can be perforation, there can be bleeding, and if the perforation is big, it can even lead to loss of the baby like that. Okay, that is the one point. Endocrine factors are very important. Just remember which disorders like DM, diabetes mellitus, and the thyroid disease, they are most important. Okay. So then in the woman who has like very high hemoglobin A1C level in the first trimester, they are at the risk of miscarriage and then malformations. So you need to reassure your patient. Normally it should be like 4.8% this hemoglobin A1C level, but if the level is more than that, then we are going to advise our patient that she should decrease her hemoglobin, she should achieve a better control of DM, and then she should try to conceive like that. And if her hemoglobin A1C level is 10 or more than that, then we are going to advise her against pregnancy because that can be detrimental to her health and others also. Thyroid, that is untreated that is going as associated with the risk of miscarriage. Okay, they can have miscarriage also. So thyroid disorders mostly they can be due to antibodies, and the anti-thyroid antibodies, they have been linked to the recurrent miscarriage. So sometimes in the exam they like to ask you that what should be the level of the serum TSH. Write it down. The TSH level should be less than 2.5. And
2.5.
though in the non-pregnant state, the TSH level can be like 4, but the point is that the data has shown that if the level is below 2.5, it is associated with good reproductive outcome like that. That is one thing, okay? So
Okay.
if the patient
Is
has
it
this one, no
all the
antibody.
trimester or in certain trimester? Is it in the first and second trimester?
It can cause like mostly in the first trimester, okay? And such patients whose TSH level is more than 2.5, it means that as you know the level of the TSH will increase, it will tell you like the ovarian function is decreasing. They will move in opposite directions, okay? So that's why the higher the TSH level, the lesser the chances of having a conception. And then even if the conception will occur, there can be like miscarriage, recurrent miscarriage can be there, okay?
Okay.
So just one line, just read it here. Don't have to ignore this whole stuff. This is wonderful stuff, but for the exam, you don't have to do this. Then PCOS. PCOS is very important. It has been linked to an increased risk of miscarriage, but the exact mechanism, that is unclear. What is the mechanism? This is just an observation that it is associated with higher chance of complications, but but the exact cause is not known. So you know the PCOS, that there is a like we have to satisfy Amsterdam criteria, like there should be enlargement of the ovaries, either the size of the ovaries we should be larger than the it should be the volume should be more than 10, or the size should be greater than like 8 centimeter. Then the second thing is that there should be clinical evidence of hyperandrogenemia.
Yeah.
Then
Biochemical,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and what else can be there?
Biochemical and clinical.
Evidence of hyperandrogenemia. That is the
Yeah.
point. Okay. Then oligomenorrhea and urea. So that is the point. Okay. So you should know about the criteria. So they will not ask you that. Usually they will not ask you, but you can say that the cause can be insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, and hyperandrogenemia. Because in pregnancy we don't want hyperandrogenemia, we just want progesterone and estrogen into the system. Estrogen as such has no role, but progesterone is more important for maintaining pregnancy like that. Then for the diagnosis of the PCOS, we are going to use the elevated androgen index. That is going to be the prognostic factor for the subsequent miscarriages, as the in the subsequent pregnancy in the women with the recurrent miscarriages. So as the free androgen index, it will rise, the number of chances of miscarriage, they will also rise like that. So free androgen index should not be more than 5 nanograms. So testosterone level or androgen level should not be more than 5 nanograms. Okay, nanograms, that is the correct unit. Then immunologic factors. So no clear evidence that to support that human leukocytic antigen between the couples, like it is mismatching, then it is going to cause the problem. So no evidence. Okay, so that's why no need to offer any type of therapy. You know, the natural killer cells are the cells which are like just going to kill the cells in the any foreign particle which is like
Do I
immunogen.
need to, it's
Okay, natural
important
killer
to know.
cells, they are found in the peripheral blood. They are found practically in each cell, in each area organ of the body. Okay, so the studies, they say that some observations were there that anything which can induce an immune response, that is going to be called an immunogen, but nothing has supported. People said that there are observations like cytokines, like they are the immunomodulators, so they are going to cause the problems. But the point is that even when they are present, nothing will happen. But here it brings to another point, that what is the normal level of this cell activity. You know, like in the so many changes will take place in the body during pregnancy. So the normal pregnancy is because of the predominantly T helper 2 cells. The cytokine response, it is responsible for it. Okay, Why? Because it is accepting the baby. So T helper T2-sided kind, this type of cells, they should increase. If they will not increase, then the patient is going to have miscarriage like that. So, but still we don't have any sufficient clinical incidence. Just remember that type 2 cells, they should be like more, okay? So that's why, nothing, so
Okay.
no role of any immunotherapy. Then the second important factor is immunogens, okay? Immunogen infective agents. Then another miscarriage which I have seen in the students. By infection, they think only bacterial infections. No, bacteria, viremia, or there can be like parasites can also be there, and toxoplasmosis can be there, and mostly there are like previously we used to say that all touch infections, they have been like they are responsible, but later the evidence showed that these are not found. This is not true. Bacterial vaginosis causes, it has been associated, but then that's why these all have been removed from the screening like that. Listeria infection, listeria is emerging as an important cause of IUFT, so you should remember that, okay, for the neonatal any infections, even for the maternal infections. Then mycoplasma is also emerging as an important infectious agent, but you are going to follow the guideline, okay? So the bacterial vaginosis, if it occurs in the first trimester of pregnancy, it has been reported as a risk factor for the preterm delivery. But the evidence from an association with the first trimester miscarriage, that is inconsistent. So important distinction. It can cause preterm delivery, but it is not going to cause recurrent miscarriage. That is
Miss,
the
okay.
point.
Yeah.
So, but it is important to treat it. Why? Because otherwise the patient can have problem. So if the patient has like bacterial vaginosis in the second trimester, then what should be the treatment? The treatment is to give them oral clindamycin.
Clindamycin.
And if your patient is sensitive to clindamycin, then what should be given? What is the second substitute? Give them flagyl,
Benzar.
metronidazole,
Okay.
right? So if the patient cannot tolerate the side effects, then you have to give it vaginally, like for one single dose of 500 mg metronidazole or clindamycin can be given like that. Metronidazole better to give 2 grams, okay? That is the point. And why we don't
Okay.
give clindamycin? Metronidazole is preferable. Clindamycin we are not usually not given. Why? Unless the patient is is allergic to the flagell. Why? Because the incidence of clindamycin resistance is very high. It is 16% in UK and 25% in the USA. That is the point. So give them the
So,
CCU.
so the first line management, is it clindamycin or
Metro.
metronidazole?
Metronidazole is
Okay.
first line. Clinda is actually, the clindamycin is mostly used nowadays as second line. Why? Because of the resistance. We know about
Resistance.
that,
Okay.
okay? So the resistance, that is the point. So give that one, and then you should remember that for like 20 years, it has been documented that flagyl or metronidazole can be given safely in all trimesters of pregnancy. Okay, don't worry about it. It is not going to cause any problem like that. Then the next
Okay.
important cause of recurrent miscarriages is inherited thrombophilic defects. So many like the acquired. So again, SBA, which of the following is the acquired deficiencies? So the acquired one, they include activated protein C resistance, most commonly due to factor 5 Leiden mutation. Deficiency of protein C and S, you know that they are going to decrease during pregnancy, okay? And antithrombin 3. Hyperhomocystinemia, that is very, very rare. Prothrombin gene mutation, very rare. So all of these are going to cause, but they are going to cause
Thrombophilia. Yeah.
thrombophilia. What type of
Clots.
thrombophilia?
Yeah.
Acquired. Be very specific, okay?
Yeah.
Two types of
Okay.
thrombophilias, acquired or inherited. Among the inherited thrombophilias, the guideline says it all. You don't have to jump from book to book, okay? Acquired very clearly. Protein C resistance, most commonly acquired thrombophilia during pregnancy is factor 5 Leiden mutation. Out of these factor 5 Leiden mutations, these can be heterozygous or they can be homozygous. Heterozygous is associated, heterozygous is still like the lesser evil. The chance of having this VTE, if your patient has like heterozygous from a factor 5 latent mutation, that is going to be like 5 to 7%. Okay, but if she is homozygous for factor 5 mutation, this one homozygous is always mostly most dangerous. Okay, so the chance of having VTE will increase to 35%. That is also like SBA. Then this one also SBA.
I always thought that factor V Laden is inherited. I don't know.
No, that's why, you know, why I'm showing you, why I'm highlighting. Just
Yeah.
to explain the point. Acquired one is like this one, okay? So
Okay.
then factor 5 latent mutation, you should have cleared, you should have very clear concept here. You know the deficiency of protein C and S. Why protein C is deficient? Because there are these mutations, okay? Deficiencies of protein C and S and antithrombin 3 deficiency. This one is very rare. Hyperhomocystinemia, that is very less, very uncommon, and this one also prothrombin also very rare. So these are the basic acquired homophilias. Among the inherited, they have been implicated as a possible cause in the recurrent miscarriage in the late pregnancy complications like that. Okay, so inherited one we are not interested here because their incidence is too very low to begin with, and then you should remember that these are most commonly associated like that. Okay, so
Okay.
and this one finding in the late trimester, yeah, it has some association. That's why, you know, the patient can have unexplained miscarriage and unexplained IUF like that. Okay, so that is one thing. So because the problem is that people, they will do many researches, but we have to pick up something which is like really responsible for causing some problem like that. So that's all you need to remember here like that. So then um, if the patients are having recurrent miscarriages, then what investigations of the couple should be done? Can you appreciate here? Here are investigations of the couple. We don't have to investigate only the woman or male. Of course, we are not doing that. Okay. So if they are
Yeah.
having recurrent miscarriages, then they should be seen by the expert. Patient is having her, send her to the early pregnancy assessment unit to send her to someone who is like experienced, has been trained in the management of the assessment of the counseling people having recurrent miscarriages. So send them to the special unit. That is the point. Regarding antiphospholipid antibodies, all women with recurrent first trimester miscarriage and all with one or more second trimester miscarriage, they should be screened before pregnancy. History is very important. So the patient has come to you, she has suffered a loss, you have to give her the roadmap for the next pregnancies. Okay, so tell them to go for testing before next pregnancy. When they changed the guideline, they said that you should do once the abortion has miscarriage has taken place, and then at least 12 weeks apart, the second reading should be taken, and then you should know. Then they will give you the cutoffs also, like look at the cutoffs like that. Either you don't have to carry out the full battery, like you have to do either lupus anticoagulant, anticardiolipin antibody of immunoglobulin G and or immunoglobulin M class, which are present in the titer of over 40 grams per liter or above 99th percentile. Then they are going to be significant. Very low level, like only when they are detectable, they are not going to cause any problem like that. Okay, so then karyotyping also SPA. This whole guideline is just about the questions. Cytogenetic analysis, it should be performed on products of conception, not on the maternal serum, on products of conception of the third and the subsequent consecutive miscarriage. Don't do that before third and the subsequent miscarriage. Then parental peripheral blood karyotyping of both partners should be performed. You need to do it for both partners. In couples
So
with
what's the
miscarriage.
difference between the cytogenic analysis and the parental peripheral blood count?
Yeah,
Oh, that's on the
yeah.
products. Yeah,
That is,
product.
this is you are carrying out on the products to see that here you are seeing that is the mother having defective presentation, and here you are going to see that baby is having abnormal genetic makeup. That is the point. Okay, so it is performed and with a peripheral blood karyotyping. Okay, parental peripheral Blood karyotyping
Blood.
for both partners. It should be performed in couples with recurrent miscarriage where testing of products of conception reports an unbalanced structural chromosomal abnormality. So this whole thing is very important. I have seen it in almost each exam. Okay,
So here it says unbalanced, not
yeah,
balanced
yeah.
like the
Here,
previous
yeah,
one.
yeah, unbalanced, but these are structural unbalanced. So previous one we had balanced, right?
Balanced
So
translocation,
here,
yeah.
yeah, here we have the products of conception where there were unbalanced structural chromosomal abnormality. So then the baby is inheriting it from somewhere, from some parent, something. So then we have to do the look for them, and then we are going to find that what is the risk of having problems like that. Then long time ago they carried out some study in like Holland, and they found that there was a low risk, like just 0.8% risk that the parents can have an unbalanced karyotyping. So that's why it is very rare like that. So only if you have done the testing on the products of conception and you have found some unbalanced structural abnormalities, then you need to do the karyotype of the parents. How? By the taking peripheral blood. But the point is that the babies should exhibit abnormal genetic makeup, unbalanced. Baby is going to show unbalanced translocation, then you are going to look at the parents RBC's blood karyotyping, peripheral blood karyotyping to find the answer. Okay? Is it clear? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, just
Yeah.
could you go back to the last point, the parental karyotyping? So it says here, parental peripheral blood karyotyping of
Yeah.
both parents should be performed in couples with recurrent miscarriage, where
Where?
testing of products of
Yeah.
conception reports an unbalanced structure. Okay,
Abnormal.
so it's only in one condition we do it. If
Yeah.
yeah, okay, got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So got it right. Straightforward.
yeah,
It is
yeah.
only on the products of conception. That is the point. Sometimes they will ask you what action you will take. The baby has this. You will say that we will send that for the management like that, for the cytogenetic analysis like that. That is the point. Okay. So then regarding the structural defects, okay, remember that they are done like in the clinical trials. So all women with recurrent first trimester miscarriage and all women with one or more second trimester miscarriage, they should be have ultrasound assessment for the uterine anomalies. Okay, that is one point. Then suspected uterine abnormalities, they may require further investigations to confirm the diagnosis, like using hysteroscopy. So they should be referred to someone who can diagnose them objectively. Sometimes we cannot use this hysteroscopy, so then we have like that is not going to give you any answer. Like so then you will have to go for laparoscopy, or you can do this 3D ultrasound. Mostly, nowadays, what is the recommendation? We are going to do the saline infusion hysterosonography. Saline infusion hysterosonography. Why? Because they are going to outline the write it down here also, because the guideline was published in 2011 and the recommendation was made later. Saline infusion sonohysterography, that is the standard nowadays. So if they give you that in the answer, that is going to be the correct answer like that.
Okay.
That is one thing. And the structural abnormalities we are not going to remove. Regarding the thrombophilias, so the women with second trimester miscarriage, they should be screened for inherited thrombophilia, including factor 5 Ladin, factor 2 thrombin, and the gene mutation and the protein S. They have inherited, okay? They're not telling us that these are all inherited. So the inherited thrombophilias are there. So if they have inherited, then you have to see that have they got any other combination of the thrombophilia or what? Because if they will have like a combination of the thrombophilia, like the congenital and the acquired, inherited and acquired, then again she is going to have problems. That is the point. So then what are the treatment options? So women with recurrent miscarriages, they should be referred to a special clinic where the trained staff is available. Okay. Regarding antiphospholipid syndrome, they should be considered for the treatment with low dose aspirin, which is antiplatelet agent. So it will prevent formation of the clot into the placental circulation, and they should be given heparin. And for heparin can be like the low molecular weight heparin, or can be the other one, can be the unfractionated heparin. Okay, so the antibodies have been found, and then this treatment, it is going to decrease the miscarriage rate by 54%, like that. Okay, that is one.
Yeah.
Heparin compared with aspirin. With heparin, the rate is 54%. Okay, this is also a very confusing MCQ here. Like, you should know that we are giving aspirin plus heparin, then they both are going to decrease the risk of miscarriage by 54%. So they are decreasing the risk of miscarriage by 54%. So they are increasing the risk, so they are increasing the chance of a live birth through how much? Without any treatment, that is 40, that is 10%. Okay, so the chance
Yeah.
of having a live birth will be
64%.
44%.
Yeah.
44%, 50,
44, yeah, yeah.
46%, 46%. Okay, so I'll correct myself. Just this one line. Don't have to go here everywhere. Okay, just remember that. That is the point. So low molecular weight heparin is safe, and then the point is that why it is safe, because it is not going to cause any congenital abnormalities. Dose can be like once daily, so it is going to increase the patient compliance. It is going to increase the risk of like heparin induced osteoporosis, but it is lower as compared to the unfractionated heparin. What is the disadvantage of low molecular weight heparin? It has a very long half life. That is only the disadvantage. So what precaution you can take? Tell the mother that anytime she has like signs and symptoms of she's experiencing symptoms of labor, then she should stop injecting heparin. It should not be given. Similarly, if your patient is found to be at very high risk of having this clot formation, like he has antithrombin 3 disorder, then in that mutation the deficiency is there, then you will have to tell her, give her unfractionated heparin, because that is short acting, so there will be no increased risk of hemorrhage. That is the point. Okay, then we don't have to give them any corticosteroids or IV immunoglobulin therapy to improve the live birth rate of the woman with recurrent miscarriage, which is associated with, not separately, associated with antiphospholipid antibodies compared with other treatment modalities, and their use may provoke significant maternal and fetal morbidity. Full stop. Don't have to go
Yeah.
anything further. Then, among the genetic factors, the finding of an abnormal parental karyotype should prompt referral to a clinical geneticist. Why? Because he will offer them the option of PGD, like that. Okay, that is
Yeah.
one thing. So that's why we should just refer them to the expert. Then pre-implantation genetic screening with IVF treatment in women, it is not going to increase the risk of the chance of
Life.
live birth. So we don't have to offer them because it is not going to improve the outcome. Actually, if you will say, you will live here, you will see here that women with unexplained recurrent miscarriages, they conceive naturally, is significantly higher than the currently or achieved after pre-implantation genetic screening. In the IVF,
Okay.
like, their birth rate is going to be much more higher in the women who are having natural conception. So it means that the women who are having like who are conceiving with miscarriage with IVF, their chance of having live birth rate is less than those who are conceiving naturally, like that. Okay. So the live birth rate of women with unexplained recurrent miscarriage who conceive naturally, here the word is naturally,
Yeah.
their birth rate is going to be 20 to 30% higher if the woman is having pre-implantation genetic screening. Like, that is the point. Okay, so that is a good point here. Then what are the anatomical factors? If there are like congenital abnormalities, uterine malformations, we have insufficient evidence of fixing them. So
Yeah.
no, if they are not recommended, that they have any role in prevention, full stop. So we don't have to do that. Cervical weakness, yes, it's a trouble zone. What should be done? Because if this cerclage is done, then your patient is going to have certain complications like risk of infection, risk of miscarriage. Okay, so you have to tell the patient very clearly that it is going to stimulate the uterus. So we have to offer it only if there is like high risk, it has been shown, or she is allergic to the progesterone. Otherwise, the better option is to give them high dose progesterone therapy for the luteal support and for the placental support. If the woman has like history of second trimester miscarriage and suspected cervical weakness, how you will know that this is something, that this is a cervical insufficiency? Because she will have painless miscarriage, okay, painless dilatation and then miscarriage like that.
With the
So
scan.
yeah, so you
Scanning.
have to offer her serial scan. She should be offered serial sonographic surveillance. That is the point, okay? So if the woman has like singleton pregnancy, this is also like very interesting point. She has singleton pregnancy and you have done ultrasound. She has like miscarriages, one history of one miscarriage, and it was like documented on the ultrasound. Then you will offer any intervention only if the cervical length is less than 25 millimeter or it is less than this one on transvaginal scan, and when before 24 weeks of gestation, like that has been indicated like that. There is a place for rescue cerclage. Rescue cerclage can be offered up to 27 plus
If
6
it,
weeks. Write it
yeah.
down. 27 plus 6 you can offer rescue cerclage. Under any condition you are not going to offer unless the length is less than 25 millimeter. They will give you, the woman has 26 centimeter and she is insisting that she should be given cervical cerclage. No, we are not going to do that. Then the endocrine factors. Still we have no evidence that we should evaluate them for progesterone supplementation. It is if there is known preterm birth, then you are going to give them progesterone sufficient supplementation, but that too is not going to prevent risk of miscarriage. That is going to decrease risk of only preterm delivery. Important point, okay, like that. No
Okay.
need to give them human chorionic gonadotropin because it is not going to decrease the risk of miscarriage. Then suppression of the higher, like the patient, they have PCOS. We know that high LH is associated with higher chance of miscarriage in patients of PCOS. The PCOS, they are going to have very high level of LH mostly, and this LH is responsible for resistant ovaries and like the patient, because for the proper LH level should not be high. LH level should be on the baseline, and then it should elevate for ovulation, and then after ovulation it should drop, okay? So if there is
That's,
no
yeah.
ovulation, why? Because there is no LH surge, so your patient doesn't have this period, so she has no periods, no ovulation, no period, so no conception. That is the point. So we don't have to give metformin. Why? Because metformin is going to sensitize the ovaries and it is going to decrease the level of LH, so there is no benefit of giving metformin. Don't give it to anyone. Immunotherapy of any kind, like any type, just remember, none of the therapies is going to be helpful, so we are not going to give it to her. It is not going to improve live birth rate. Then regarding the inherited thrombophilia, whenever your patient has any inherited thrombophilia, she should be like, if they are diagnosed within the first trimester of the, we don't have any, we have insufficient evidence that she should be evaluated. We don't have to evaluate her. Heparin therapy during pregnancy, it may improve the live birth rate of the women with this miscarriage who are having inherited thrombophilias. Of course, if they have inherited thrombophilia, like most of the therapies, they are going to work only if your patient is in the high risk group. Otherwise, these interventions are just useless. Then women who are having like unexplained miscarriages, the point is that if they are given constant reassurance, then they are going to conceive. They will have excellent prognosis for future pregnancy outcome without pharmacological intervention if offered sportive care alone in the setting of a dedicated early pregnancy assessment unit. So if they give you someone like no cause was found and they will ask you like, what will you do for such patients? You will say that these women, if they are given in the appointments in the special clinics, then their birth rate can be expected to be as high, only with a supportive care, as high as in the region of 75%. Because the point is that there are so many things which we know nothing about right now, but eventually, as the future research will be done and the latest evidence will emerge, we will have better insights into the further uh, contributory factors, and then these patients, they can be given further treatment or the guidelines. That is the point.